I'm Anil Kumar. Welcome to my series on ratio and proportions. We'll take up some basic concepts relating ratios. We have 5 questions in this video and they will help you to understand these concepts. First question here is write two equivalent ratios for each. To write an equivalent ratio, you have to multiply the terms, these are called the terms, by some number which is called the scale factor, correct? You can always pause the video, answer the question and then look into my suggestions. So since we need to find two equivalent ratios, first I'll multiply both these terms by 2 and then I'll multiply both these terms by 3 and write down the equivalent ratios. So if I multiply by 2, I get 4 is to 6. Do you see that? So both terms should be multiplied by the same number and this number is called scale factor. Clear? Now if I am multiplying them by 3, we get 3 times 2 as 6 and 3 times 3 as 9. So these three are equivalent ratios, exactly same ratios. Correct? So you can actually perform this operation in BCD and then look into my answers. So I'll just multiply by 2. So we get twice 5 is 10, twice 7 is 14. Multiplying by 3 can give us 15 is to 21, right? Now it is not necessary that you always multiply. You could sometimes divide also. In fact, we normally divide to get the lowest terms or the simplified form. So these two numbers we could actually divide by 3, right? And then get equivalent forms also, right? So here the scale factor is 1 over 3. So in this case 1 over 3 is scale factor. Clear? So scale factor could be less than 1. It could be a fraction. So you're multiplying by 1 over 3, which is as good as dividing by 3. So when you divide by 3, 27, you get 9, right? And dividing 18 by 3, you get 6. Now you can again divide by 3, right? To get the next, we can again divide by 3. And we get 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 2. You get the idea, right? So that is how you can get other equivalent ratios. Now you will notice that in this particular case, we landed with 3 over 2. Now this is the lowest term, right? So this is the simplified form. Now in this simplified form, we do not have any common factor, right? So there is no common factor to divide both. Is that clear? So we have learned a couple of things here. Equivalent ratios you get by multiplying by scale factors. Scale factors could be more than 1, as we saw here, or less than 1, could be a fraction. Once you do this operation, you will sometimes get a simplified form. Rather, always you can get simplified form, correct? Now 4 is to 8. Now in this, we could actually divide by 2, right? So if I divide by 2, that is scale factor is half. So in that case, I get half of these numbers as 2 is to 4, right? I can actually also multiply, right? So we can actually multiply this by 3 to get equivalent ratio, which could be something like this. 3 times 2 is 6 and 3 times 4 is 12. Do you see that? So that means to get equivalent ratios, you could multiply or you could divide. I hope that is perfectly fine. Correct? Now here is another example for you to practice. We'll take this up in the next page. Question number 2. In question number 2, we need to write missing terms in each ratio. So we have the first ratio of 4 is to 3. So I have written 12 we need to figure out what is this term, right? So basically, we are still writing equivalent ratios, correct? So we are still working with equivalent ratios. Okay, now in this case, we have to see how do we get 4 from 4, 3? How do we get this number 12 from 4, right? So we know 4 times 3 is 12. That means we have to multiply the other term also by 3, right? The scale factor is 3 here. So 3 times 3 is 9, and that is how you get your missing term, right? So 4 is to 3 and 12 is to 9 are equivalent ratios. So I hope the concept is clear. Perfect. Now I'd like you to pause the video and answer the rest. Now here we are given 5 is to 3 equals to something is to 21. Now how do I get 21 from 3? Well, times 7. So I have to do times 7 to 5 also to get this answer, which is 35. Clear? So that is how you should be doing it. Now C and D are slightly tricky, since getting from 27 to 18 is not easy, right? Correct? How do you get from 27 to 18? Well, what we could do sometimes is we can actually get some equivalent ratios and then work on it. You get the idea. So the thing is, in such cases, we could get into equivalent ratios and then see how do we get the answer. Clear? So that is one way of doing it, right? So what we could do is, whatever ratio is given to us, we could write this in simplified form. So in this case, we'll write in the simplified form. We say simplify the ratio, and then we do it. Is it okay? So we are given 18 to 26. I could divide both by 2, right? So if I divide both by 2, I get 9 is to 13. You get the idea? So what we did was that in this case, we divided both by 2, right? So we got 9 is to 13. And now we can see 9 times 3 is 27, right? So we know now 9 times 3 is 27. So we'll do 3 times 13 also to get our answer. So 3 times 13 is 39, and that's how we get this number. Do you see? So sometimes it becomes very tricky. So you have to add one step, that is, get to the lowest term and then find the equivalent ratio. This is very important exercise, right? So let's do it again here, just to practice. 15 is to 10. I could divide both by 5. So I could write this as 3 is to 2. Do you see that? So I wrote 15 is to 10 as 3 is to 2. They are same things, correct? How did I get that? Well, I divided by 5 to get this result. And now I could multiply and then check what should I get here. Now 2 times 4 is 8, right? So we are going to multiply by 4, both of them. 4 times 3 is 12, and we get 12 here. So that is how we should be doing it. At this stage, I'd like you to pause the video and understand what we have really done in part C and D. We actually simplified our ratio on the right side, and then we got the missing number on the left side. I hope you appreciate it. Let's move on and take up question number 3. In question number 3, we have written ratios in the form of proportions, right? So you see this equal to sign. So we have an equation here. So whenever you write in the form of proportions, you get this kind of an equation, right? Like fractions equal to another fraction, correct? So when we write ratios in this form, we say these are proportions, correct? Okay. Now question number 3 here is, find the missing term in each proportion. So 3 is to 6 equals to 1 over x. We need to figure out what this x is. Well, the strategy is same. How do we get from 3 this number 1? Well, what we are doing here is we are dividing by 3. So when you divide 3 by 3, you get 1. So x should be what? Well, x should be equal to 6 divided by 3, which is 2, correct? So this basic ratio is 1 over 2. Does it make sense to you? So x is 2 for us, right? So that is how we are going to do this exercise. Here is another example. I'd like you to pause the video and solve it. Now in this particular case, 3 over 7 equals to x over 21. We need to find the value of x. Now, from 7, how do you get 21? Well, to get this, I have to multiply by 7 times 3 is 21. So we do times 3, correct? To get from here to there. So 3 times 3 is 9. So I could write this as 9 over 21. So we can say x is equal to 9. Does it make sense to you? So that is how we are going to do it. Correct? So these were straightforward with same number being multiplied to get the result. Now we have slightly more tricky questions. Remember, writing the simplest form, we have to do that now in the questions to follow. 4 over 8 equals to x over 4. What is x? Well, how do we get 4 from 8? We have to divide by 2. So that becomes the scale factor, correct? So dividing by 2, what should we get here? 4 divided by 2 is 2. So we get x equals to 2, correct? So this should be 2 over 4. Is that right? Right? Now, part D. 4 over 6 is equal to 10 over x. Now, how do you get from 4 to 10? That's difficult. So that is where the lowest terms come, right? We could actually divide 4 and 6 both by 2 to write this as 2 over 3. Do you see that? So what we did here, we wrote equivalent ratio. Ratios can be written with semicolons or with fractions. Both are ratios, right? Okay. Now you can see we divided by 2 half of this to get our equivalent ratio. Now we can see how do we get from 2 to 10. That is to say, how do we get from here to there? Well, 2 to 10 is times 5. So we have to do 3 times 5. So we get 15 here, right? So this is 10 over 15. And we know x is equal to 15 for us. Is that clear to you? So that is how you will be doing it. So it's slightly more tricky now. So I'd like you to actually pause the video, copy rest of the questions and solve them. This is a very important exercise. Okay, the next one here is 3 over 6 equals to x over 9. First step is to write this in simplified form. 3 over 6 could be written as dividing both by 3. Half. Right? So dividing both by 3, we get half, right? So now, how do I get from this ratio, right? So we know that the number here is actually half of 9. So this is normally in the ratios we don't write decimals. Now what we should do is we have to do half of 9 to write there. So actually it will be half of 9, which is 4.5, right? Not a good way of writing, so I'm going to change this to 9 over 18. Is it okay? So I'll change this question. Instead of 9, take it as 18 and then do half of 18 as 9. Is that okay? Now this is not for you. This we'll kind of skip this portion. Is it okay? So we did this half of equivalent to 3 over 6, and then we did half of 9 to get 4.5. But in ratios, we avoid writing decimals. That is not a good way of writing. So we'll treat this as a wrong question. We'll make this as 18, right? So let me just change this. So I'm changing this question to equal to x over 18. Find x. Is that okay now for you? So find x, okay? So you could do it by 6 to 18 is times 3, right? So we get from here to there by multiplying by 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. So we get 9 over 18 as the right answer. Is that clear to you? So I kind of cancelled that out. Okay. The next one here is 18 over x equals to 12 over 20. How do we find this value of x? Okay. So what we will do again, 12 over 20, write this as an equivalent ratio. You could divide both by 4. So we get 4 divides into 12 3 times and into 20 5 times. And now from 3 over 5 we can easily get 18 over x, correct? So that is by multiplying by 6. 6 times 3 is 18 and 6 times 5 is 30. So x is 30, right? So we get x equals to 30. Is that clear to you? So that is how you're going to do it. Perfect. Now these two are your test questions. Now I'd like you to pause the video, answer these questions, and then move forward. Correct? Okay. Now here is my suggestion. So what we will do, first step, reduce 12 over 20. Dividing both by 4, we get 3 over 5 as we did earlier. Now 3 over 5, you can say, well, this is x equals to 5. Clear? Because 3 over 5 and 3 over 5, it works out perfectly fine, correct? Now in this case, what are you going to do? We have to get this x, which is under 24, 30 over 25. We could divide these by 5, getting 6 over 5. Now from 6 to get to 24, what should I do? I have to times it by 4. So what I get here is 24 times 4. Times 4, 5 is 20, right? That means x is 20, correct? So that is how you should be doing it. So this was slightly more trickier than what we had done earlier, but that is how ratios and proportions could be. It looks simple, but as you move forward, it becomes very tricky. Okay, now let's move on and take question number 4. Well, in question number 4, we have ratio of 3 terms. So in ratios, we could have 2 or more. So we could have 3 also. I'd like you to pause the video, answer this question, and then look into my suggestions. As you can see, question number 4 involves 3 terms. Well, the strategy is same. 1:4:3 equals to something is to something is to 9. We should see how do we get from 3 to 9. Well, clearly it is times 3, right? So we have to do times 3 each term. So when you do times 3, 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 4 is 12. So those are the answers. Is that clear to you? That is how you're going to do it. Once again, we have something similar. 5 is to something is to 4 equals to something is to 18 is to 12. Now we have to see what is given to us. Well, we are at least given one position, 4 to 12. And from 4 to 12, it is times 3. That means again, we have to multiply by 3 to go from this side, right? So 5 times 3 will get to 15. But how do we get back? Now something is missing in this side. So when you do the reverse operation, then what should you do? Should you multiply by 3 or divide by 3? You have to divide. See, these numbers are all smaller numbers. So we have to divide by 3. So when you divide 18 by 3, you get the number 6. So we get 6 here. So we get 5, 6, 4 is the same ratio as 15, 18, 12. Does it make sense to you? Correct? So those were direct answers. Now in C and D, we have indirect answers. Let us see how to do these. Now 12 is to something is to 10 equals to 18 is to 6 is to something else. Can you tell me what will be there in these missing terms? Well, we could simplify this a bit and then move forward. Does it make sense to you? So let me divide both by 2, right? So let me divide both by 2. So I could write this as 6 is to something is to 5. So I divided everything by 2, right? Here also I'm dividing by 2. I'm getting 9 is to 3 is to something else. Is that clear? right? So we just kind of divide it, right? Okay. So that could help us to get to this number. Does it make sense to you? Right? So we could do like this to get to this number. Now, what we are looking at is, let's look into this. We divide it to get 6, and from 6, how do we get 18? Well, times 3, right? So what we could do is, from 6 to 18 is times 3, right? From 6 to 18 is times 3. So to get this number, which is at the end, we should do times 3 here also. So that number should be 15. Is that clear to you? That number should be 15. Clear? So what we did was, we divided by 2 and then we did times 3 to get from here to there. How do we get back from 6 to this place? That is a big question. So we have to do reverse operations. So you have to do reverse. So we did divide by 2 times 3. Now what we are doing, we have to go from 6 to this position. So what we should do, we have to divide by 3 and then times 2. Do you see that? So first we'll divide by 3. So when you divide 6 by 3, you get 2, and 2 times 2 is 4, and you get 4 here. Does it make sense to you? That is how you could actually do it. So it is kind of tricky, as you can see. From 12 to 18, we divided 12 by 2 multiplied by 3. 10 to next number, divide 10 by 2, you get 5, times 3 is 15, you get your answer. But when you have to do the reverse operation, you have to first divide by 3 and then multiply by 2. Go in the reverse order to get your answer. Is that clear to you? That is how we are going to do it. Okay? Apply this strategy to get the last question here on this page. 14 is to something is to 18 equals to, 42 is to something is to 18 equals to 14 is to 10 is to something else. Now, first, let's figure out what should this number be. Well, as far as 14 and 18 are concerned, we could actually divide by 6 and we get 7 is to something is to 3, right? And now, from 7 to 14, we could times it by 2. So that is the operation. Is that clear? So, same thing with, we have already divided this, and now we'll do this as times 2. So times 2 is 6. So we get this number as 6, right? Now, the numbers on the right should be smaller than the numbers on the left, as you can see by comparison. 42 to 14, 18 to 6. Does make sense to you? Okay. Now, the reverse operation should be done to get from 10 to this point. What did we do? We times by 2. So first thing, we'll divide by 2. So when you divide 10 by 2, you get 5. We are talking about this number 10. And then we divide by 6, but now we are going to times by 6. Just the reverse operation. 6 times 5 is 30. So we get our answer as 30. Does it make sense to you? So the reverse operation is to be performed to get the equivalent proportions, as we've done in this example. Perfect. Watch it carefully, right? Try to simplify and then get your answers. Once you are clear about it, then let's take the last question here, which is question number 5. Now, question number 5 is a word problem, correct? I'd like you to pause the video, read this question, answer, and then look into my suggestions. Question number 5 is, a bag contains 2 red balls, 3 blue balls, and 4 green balls. Marbles, right. So a bag contains only marbles and we have 2 red marbles, 3 blue marbles, and 4 green marbles. The question for you is, what is the ratio of red to green marbles in simplest form? So red to greens, you can see very clearly. We have 2 red, right? And we have 4 green. So you could write ratio as a fraction. You could write like this also, right? 2 to 4. Now it says in the simplest form. Means the common factor is 2. You could divide both by 2. So we get half. Correct? So that is how you could write. So red to green is equal to half. 1:2. You could also write this answer as red to green is equal to 1:2. Is that clear to you? Right? So 1:2 is the simplest form. Correct? Now let's look into the part B, which is what is the ratio of blue marbles to total number of marbles? Blue marbles, so we have to have blue to total. Now blue is 1, 2, 3. And total is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Do you see that? Total means all of them combined. So we have blue to total as 3:9. In the simplest form, you could also write this as 1:3. Is that clear to you? Good. So the ratios can be written as a fraction or with the colon, as we have written here, right? Okay. See. How many green marbles should be added so that the ratio of blue to green marbles become 1:3? So we want blue to green as equal to 1:3. Well, we have 3 blues and 4 greens. So we have only 3 blues. But if you want this to be 9, right, times 3, right, 1:3. So that means we want green as what? Well, we want green as 9. So how can we do that? So 1:3 we have to do. So 3 times 3 is 9. So to get 9 green, we already have 4. So 9 minus 4 gives us 5, right? So we have to add 5 green marbles. Is that clear? So that is how you're going to answer this question. So I hope it makes sense. Feel free to write your comment, share your views. If you like and subscribe to my videos, that'd be great. Thanks for watching and all the best.